What happens in the exact moment when two bodies unite goes far beyond what any biology textbook has ever been able to explain. There's something happening there, something unseen, yet transformative. A fusion of energies, memories, and even threads of destiny intertwine silently, leaving marks that no physical separation can erase. Blavatsky, one of the most controversial figures in modern occultism, once claimed that the real impact of intimate union doesn't occur in the body, but in the invisible layers of the soul. Few dare to talk about this, because what's at stake here isn't just desire, affection, or pleasure. It's an energetic exchange that can alter mental patterns, attract unknown entities, and reopen ancient soul agreements. In this video, we will traverse a territory where science still treads carefully, and spirituality prefers to whisper only to the initiated. A realm where the subconscious converses with the invisible, and love can either be a key or a prison. In why? What follows, you'll understand why you've never heard anything about this, and how this secret might change everything. There are moments when the body seems like just a detail. When two people unite intimately, something escapes our sight but leaves a deep impression, like a fragrance that lingers in the air long after the person wearing it has gone. Blavatsky called this emanatio astralis, a subtle emission, almost like an invisible breath of the soul. This breath is not a metaphor, according to her, but an etheric substance that crosses dimensions, altering not just emotional states, but the very energetic structure of both the one who emits it and the one who receives it. Today, neuroscientists acknowledge that the human body emits electromagnetic signals that vary with our emotions. The heart, for example, has a field detectable from several feet away. But what science doesn't explain, or perhaps chooses not to, is what happens when these fields overlap in a moment of total surrender. Physical touch is only the surface. Beneath it, there's an exchange of information that bypasses words and conscious thoughts. It's as if two entire systems connect and, for a few moments, become a single vibrational circuit. And the most curious part, this fusion doesn't always make us stronger. Blavatsky warned that the etheric breath carries deep emotional imprints, fears, guilt, unresolved desires. All of this is transmitted, even unintentionally. The body may forget quickly. The soul does not. According to her, every intimate encounter leaves a kind of impression on the astral field. Like footprints on invisible ground, these marks remain, influencing dreams, impulses, even decisions we believe are rational. The Hindu tradition already spoke of this when referring to samskaras, mental impressions that shape our future experiences. Modern psychology tries to account for this using terms like emotional memory or deep-rooted trauma, but something still escapes these technical labels. How do you explain that strange feeling of carrying something that isn't yours? Or the inexplicable emptiness that follows an apparently perfect connection? Perhaps what was absorbed in that invisible breath continues to resonate within us, long after the moment has passed. If this is true, how many fragments of others are inside you right now? How many versions of yourself have been shaped by encounters that seemed fleeting but actually altered your most intimate frequency? Blavatsky suggested this process is irreversible. What was exchanged remains. What was opened doesn't close in the same way. And perhaps that's why some people are never quite the same after certain encounters. But if this breath really crosses the most subtle planes, what exactly does it carry with it? And more unsettling still, what does it bring back? Imagine that with every intimate touch, an invisible signature was imprinted within you, not a mark on the body, but on the most subtle field of your existence. Blavatsky, in her lesser-known writings, described this signature as an energetic imprint, something as real as a scar on the skin, but infinitely deeper, a mark that neither time nor distance could completely erase. Modern science confirms that intense emotional experiences shape not only the brain, but also the electromagnetic frequency of our being. The problem is, little is said about how these frequencies intertwine with those of others. When the union is intimate, the fields merge so intensely that they leave permanent vibrational traces. Could this be the hidden explanation for that feeling of still sensing someone, even years after a separation? These records aren't made with ink or words. They're imprinted with emotions, unconscious memories, and subtle impulses we sometimes don't even recognize as our own. Every person who has crossed this boundary with you has left something inside your vibrational field. Maybe a whisper of affection, maybe a shadow of pain. The question is, what are these signatures influencing in who you are today? And more importantly, would you be able to distinguish what's truly yours from what you inherited from these encounters? In esoteric philosophy, these impressions are called vibrational codes, a kind of energetic identity that overlays our own layers. Psychologists talk about emotional baggage, but the clinical language fails to capture the true magnitude of what actually happens. Imagine carrying, without realizing it, someone's unresolved sadness, or the shattered hope of an old love. How would that shape your choices, your fears, your most secret dreams? Quantum physics suggests that everything intensely experienced is recorded in the universe's field of possibilities. So maybe the most frightening question isn't what was left behind, but how many versions of yourself are being shaped by stories you no longer consciously remember. Stories engraved not in your logical mind, but in the hidden territory of your energetic essence. If every intimate encounter really leaves an eternal signature, what happens when we accumulate too many marks? And is there any way to cleanse what has become an invisible part of who we are? There are encounters that don't make sense. People we've just met who stir up a disturbing sense of familiarity. The heart races, the body reacts, and something inside us whispers, "I've been here before." Blavatsky said that in those moments, it's not the conscious mind reacting, but the soul's oldest memory, the one that neither time nor forgetting can erase. Depth psychology describes this phenomenon as archetypal resonance. Carl Jung observed that certain figures activate ancestral patterns within us, almost as if awakening something that's always been there. But Blavatsky went further. According to her, when two people meet intimately, it's not just symbols that are activated. Entire past lives can be accessed. Could that explain sudden passions? Or aversions without any clear reason? It's as if the subconscious opens an ancient book filled with stories we don't remember living. The connection is immediate, but the logical explanation simply doesn't exist. Science tries to attribute these phenomena to chemical impulses or neural patterns. But do molecules really explain that feeling of recognizing someone by their eyes, even if you've never seen them before? Or the ache in your chest when you're near someone who somehow feels like they've hurt you before? If it's true that the body feels what the soul remembers, then every intimate connection would actually be a reactivation of memories far older than we imagine. They wouldn't just be meetings between two people in the present, but reunions between consciousnesses that have touched before, in other bodies, other times, perhaps in other realities. And if this theory is correct, how many of your current decisions are being guided by memories you don't even know you carry? The subconscious mind does not judge, question, or explain. It simply recognizes and reacts. That's why, so often, we are drawn to those who awaken nameless, shapeless sensations in us, but with an almost uncontrollable force. Perhaps deep down, intimacy reveals less about the moment and more about our hidden spiritual history. The other becomes a mirror, reflecting forgotten fragments of our own journey. But if the subconscious recognizes, what exactly is it remembering? And what happens when that memory should not have resurfaced? Have you ever felt that, even after cutting all ties with someone, something invisible still pulled you back? Blavatsky described this as the creation of etheric cords, filaments of energy formed between two consciousnesses that connect intimately. It doesn't matter the distance, time, or absence of physical contact. These bonds continue to exist, like underground roots linking souls beneath the visible surface of life. Modern neuroscience shows that deep emotional connections shape lasting neural circuits. But what it still doesn't explain is why certain bonds seem to transcend not just the brain, but will itself. Blavatsky claimed that during intimate acts, these cords are woven through subtle fields, anchoring part of our energy in the other person and receiving part of theirs in return. A silent yet powerful exchange that redefines who we are in ways we don't always perceive. These cords don't simply break with forgetfulness or time. On the contrary, the more intense the shared emotion, the stronger the bond. Perhaps that's why certain pains linger, certain names continue echoing in random thoughts, and certain dreams insist on bringing back faces that should have been left behind. Are we truly free, or just deluded by a freedom that is only physical? In ancient spiritual traditions, such as those of Egypt and India, there were already talks of these invisible bonds. Rituals were performed to untie these connections. After intense relationships, knowing that without doing so, the soul could remain trapped in cycles of suffering and repetition. Today, few remember these rituals, and perhaps we pay the price for that forgetfulness, carrying emotional burdens that no longer belong to us. If connecting with someone also links you to their pains, fears, and shadows, then every intimate relationship could be an inheritance of unresolved emotions. And if these cords silently influence our thoughts, emotions, and even future desires, how much of our choices are truly ours? Or are they merely echoes of invisible pacts still pulsing within our souls? But if these bonds remain, is there any true way to break them? Or are we forever connected to those with whom we've once shared our deepest essence? We are not always drawn to what is beautiful or luminous in the other. Sometimes what binds us is precisely what we cannot see in ourselves. Blavatsky said that the intimate encounter is, at its core, a silent confrontation with our own shadow. That forgotten, rejected, or feared part that projects onto the other everything we don't dare recognize within ourselves. Carl Jung echoed this idea by stating that we fall in love not only with what is admirable in another, but also with what they carry of our own hidden wounds. What if every intense connection were actually an unconscious attempt to reconcile parts of ourselves that we insist on keeping in the dark? Quantum physics, with its theory of invisible entanglements, suggests that what we observe outside is, in a way, shaped by what we carry inside. Imagine looking into someone's eyes and, without realizing it, seeing ancient fears, hidden desires, and hopes you didn't even know still existed. Intimacy brutally exposes this truth. In the heat of the encounter, we are not just ourselves. We are also everything we deny being. Every word, every gesture, every loaded silence reveals a forgotten fragment of our own soul. That's why some relationships are so intense, so painful, so hard to leave behind. We are not just battling the other. We are fighting against the parts of ourselves they bring to light. Parts we believed were buried, overcome, or tamed, but that remain alive, waiting for acknowledgement. The other becomes a mirror, and every intimate act is an invitation or a trap to confront our own nature. If every person who crossed our path was a reflection of our hidden zones, how many times have we unknowingly been running from ourselves while trying to distance ourselves from others? And how many old wounds were reopened, not by another's malice, but because they still bled inside us? Blavatsky believed that true healing begins when we stop fighting the reflection and start truly seeing who we are. But if intimacy reveals our shadow, Are we truly prepared to face everything it has to show? Or will we continue breaking mirrors just to avoid seeing? When two people unite intimately, what happens goes beyond flesh and emotion. Blavatsky claimed that in that moment, there is a silent exchange of deep patterns, as if fragments of who we are shared at levels the conscious mind can't even access. She called this the transmission of ancestral energy, an invisible soul DNA being passed from one to another. Science is beginning to feel around this mystery with studies on epigenetic inheritance, showing that emotions and traumas can alter genetic expression. But what if, in intimate union, the exchange is even subtler? Not just molecules sending messages, but souls intertwining their stories. Every touch, every shared breath could be carrying information that goes beyond the logic of chromosomes and plunges into what we call essence. Imagine carrying within yourself not just the marks of your choices, but also the fears, hopes, and even the ghosts of those you once loved. And not in a symbolic way, but truly embedded in the vibrational fabric that shapes your consciousness. Blavatsky suggested this process is inevitable. No matter the caution, no matter the detachment, every intimate fusion leaves traces that become part of who we are. It's as if every relationship added a new layer to our identity, silently rewriting parts of our internal script. Perhaps that's why some changes in our lives seem to come out of nowhere. New insecurities, new dreams, new impulses. Are they truly ours? Or are they seeds planted by past encounters, germinating at the right time, without us knowing their true origin? Consciousness in this context ceases to be an isolated island. We become an archipelago of shared experiences, of invisible influences, of traces inherited through intimacy. Every act of surrender silently shapes who we will be tomorrow. And the more we ignore this process, the more enslaved we become by stories we never fully understood. But if we are constantly carrying fragments of others within ourselves, is there any version of us that is truly ours? Have you ever felt the presence of someone who was no longer there? A familiar scent, a sudden chill, a thought that seemed not to be your own. Blavatsky believed that after an intimate union, energetic, fragments remain circulating between souls, creating what she called astral echoes. These are subtle presences that do not simply vanish because the body has walked away. Quantum physics brings a concept called entanglement. Particles that, even separated by immense distances, remain mysteriously connected. And what if this entanglement was not only physical? What if it also existed between consciousnesses, binding emotions, thoughts, and memories, with invisible threads that continue vibrating long after the farewell? Science acknowledges that information can be shared instantly between entangled particles. But what happens when this occurs between people? In many accounts, it's common to hear stories of persistent dreams, emotions that arise for no apparent reason, sensations of loss that don't match the logic of the present. Are they merely emotional residues, or silent evidence that a part of the other's energy is still circulating within our subtle fields? Blavatsky warned, not every absence is a true absence. Sometimes, what we feel are the vibrational traces of something that left a deeper impression than we would like to admit. Perhaps that's why some goodbyes are so painful. We are not just saying goodbye to a body, but to an energetic extension that continued feeding us, shaping us, influencing us in invisible ways. The longing we feel may be the echo of a bond that, at deeper levels, has not yet been undone. A bond that keeps pulsing, even though our words, our decisions, and our new paths try to ignore it. But there is something even more disturbing. What if these fragments not only remained, but also mixed, transformed, and continued to act silently? In our lives, which thoughts are truly yours? Which feelings arise from your true self? Or are we all somehow being crossed by presences that never completely left us? If part of the other still lives in you, how much of you is still truly yourself? There is a moment during intimate union when everything seems suspended. Time slows down, the body dissolves into sensations, and the mind abandons any form of control. Blavatsky said that in that moment, the soul becomes vulnerable, like a window thrown open to the wind, receptive not only to the other person, but to everything vibrating on invisible planes. It is there, precisely at that point between pleasure and surrender, that something opens, and we don't always know what enters. This emotional surrender is not just romantic. It is a phenomenon of energetic amplification. Neuroscientists have already proven that during climax, there is a partial deactivation of the prefrontal cortex, the region linked to judgment and self-censorship. What does that mean? That our rational defenses give way to instinct, to the deep emotional field, and to what many call the spiritual dimension. But if we are open, what else is silently observing us there? Blavatsky warned that in this opening, external forces, whether old memories, astral presences, or even non-human consciousnesses, can connect to our vibrational field. For many, this sounds like superstition. But why do so many people report strange feelings, visions, unexplained chills, or tears without cause after an intimate act? Is it just emotion or influence? Millennia-old tantric rituals viewed this moment as a sacred portal, an instant of ego dissolution where the being could, for brief seconds, touch the truth of its own soul. But they also knew the risk. What is opened must be consciously closed. Otherwise, the portal remains ajar, allowing other energies to enter, mix, and subtly transform the state of the one who surrendered. Perhaps that's why so many people feel they have changed after certain relationships, not because of trauma, nor because of love, but because something was activated. A field was accessed, and a part of them that was once dormant now pulses with an unfamiliar frequency. Emotional surrender, in this case, ceases to be merely a human gesture. It becomes an involuntary ritual of spiritual exposure. But if each act of intimacy is a door, who else is on the other side, waiting to cross it? To desire is not just to think. To desire is to emit. It is to vibrate at a frequency that crosses barriers, that propagates toward what we seek, or toward what finds us. Blavatsky said that desire, in its purest form, is an invocation. It does not arise merely from the body or mind, but from the entire energetic field, and when released intensely, it acts as a magnet for forces beyond ordinary. Perception. Today, neuroscience studies already indicate that intense emotions alter the electromagnetic field around the human body. But what does that mean when we talk about desire? It means that at the moment of deep longing, we are not just feeling, we are emitting signals. And they are not silent signals. They are vibrational pulses that echo into dimensions physics has yet to fully name. Pulses that may summon that which lies beyond comprehension. According to Blavatsky, there are entities, some conscious, others merely resonant, that are attracted to these vibrations. Like moths drawn to light, desire generates openness, and every openness creates a breach. It's no coincidence that ancient accounts describe out-of-body experiences, sensations of invisible presences, or sudden mood changes during or right after the intimate act. Could it be that, unknowingly, we open portals to intelligences that respond to this frequency? Occult traditions warn, not every desire is pure, and not every energy that responds comes to add. Human will is a creative force, but also a summoning. 1. And what is summoned sometimes comes disguised as pleasure, but brings with it bonds, exchanges, and influences that surpass rational comprehension. Have you ever felt that something entered with the desire, that after satisfying it, a void remained that wasn't merely emotional? The question few dare to ask is, what exactly is answering when we call out so intensely? Are we connecting only with another human being, or with something beyond them, beyond ourselves? Something that feeds on this impulse, that anchors itself in it and begins to circulate through the fields of our consciousness? If desire is an emission, what happens when it reaches something that was merely waiting to be summoned? There are moments when everything seems to distort. Time slows down, the space around dissolves, and the perception of reality subtly changes. During intimate union, many describe extraordinary experiences, sensations of merging with the universe, loss of time perception, or even the impression of being outside one's own body. To Blavatsky, these reports were not delusions. They were symptoms of a phenomenon she called vibrational curvature, when consciousness touches a frequency so intense that reality itself bends. Quantum physics acknowledges that reality is not as solid as it seems. The observer influences the observed. Matter behaves differently when being measured. But what if, at the peak of intimate surrender, we stopped being mere observers? What if, for brief instants, we became active participants in a quantum collapse, where everything around us, time, space, identity, bends before the force of lived experience? Blavatsky suggested that at that moment, a mirror is activated. Not a physical mirror, but a reflection of the deepest level of consciousness. What is revealed there? Some say they see themselves with absurd clarity. Others see landscapes they don't recognize, hear voices not belonging to this world, or receive insights about life they had never considered. Is it a psychic journey induced by hormones, or an opening to other states of existence? The oldest esoteric traditions saw the intimate act as a portal between worlds. In Tantra, this union is called Mithuna, and it is not merely about physical pleasure, but about the fusion of the finite with the infinite. During this expanded state of consciousness, it was believed that the soul could see what is normally hidden, spiritual truths, karmic patterns, or even parallel realities coexisting on other vibrational levels. Interestingly, after such experiences, many people report irreversible changes, sharpened intuition, vivid dreams, subtle perceptions that didn't exist before. Reality seems to have opened in some way, as if something had been shown, and can no longer be ignored. As if intimacy had pushed the doors of the mind into a place where logic no longer rules. But if reality truly bends in these moments, who or what is looking back through that mirror? Why do we insist on repeating stories that hurt us? Why are we magnetically drawn to people who seem to touch exactly our wounds? Blavatsky believed that behind these choices lies more than emotional patterns. There are living archetypes acting through us. And one of them, perhaps the most silent, is the wounded lover, a hidden image that, once activated, commands entire relationships without our awareness. Depth psychology acknowledges this. Jung said that archetypes are not merely symbols. They are forces. They are invisible structures that shape behaviors, desires, and even our most intimate obsessions. And according to Blavatsky, when two people unite energetically, these forces are intensified. Intimacy not only reveals wounds, it reactivates them. It's not just about chemistry, attraction, or affinity. It's about a reunion with the archetypal drama we've always carried long before this life. Have you ever found yourself repeating the same mistakes with different people? Felt like you were living the same story again, even though everything seemed new? Perhaps what was repeating wasn't the person, but the pattern. A deeply rooted vibrational memory projecting itself onto the other and guiding us through an invisible script. Pain becomes a compass, abandonment becomes addiction, and attachment disguises itself as love. Esoteric traditions teach that many relationships don't begin in the present. They are unfoldings of old agreements, unfinished experiences, or unlearned lessons. And repetition is the sign that something there still needs understanding. But understanding alone is not enough, because the wounded lover archetype grows stronger precisely in intensity, in how much we suffer, in how much we give of ourselves hoping for healing, and instead receive mirrors that only deepen the emptiness. Blavatsky saw this cycle as a form of forced purification, as if suffering and love were, in some cases, a kind of psychic alchemy. Either you transform or you lose yourself. The danger is that by identifying too much with the pain, we unconsciously start to seek it. We love those who hurt us because, somehow, we need to reenact the wound in order to try to close it. But does it truly want to be closed, or simply recognized? And what if what we most desire is precisely what keeps us trapped in this hidden cycle? Few people realize it, but consciousness changes form. It is not static, it is not rigid. It responds, adapts, and transforms based on what we experience, especially in the realm of intimacy. Blavatsky claimed that every intense experience reshapes not only our beliefs and emotions, but also our subtle body itself. Like vibrational clay, our essence is sculpted by the emotions we pass through, and most importantly, by those we absorb from others. Neuroplasticity shows that the brain is shaped by experience. Traumas, affections, habits, everything alters the way we think and feel. But science still does not address the most unsettling question. What happens when transformation occurs not only in the brain, but on deeper levels where thought and energy become one? Blavatsky believed that every act of intimacy is a form of alchemy. Every emotionally charged act is a reconfiguration of consciousness. Have you ever felt like you became a different person after a relationship, as if something had been broken or perhaps awakened within you? Sometimes love heals. Other times it reveals wounds that were dormant but still alive. And it is in that confrontation between who we were and who we are, forced to become, that consciousness begins to transform. Not by choice, but by exposure. Intimacy doesn't just touch us. It reshapes us from within. In certain spiritual traditions, the emotional body is seen as a vibrational field in constant mutation. And this field is like a sponge. It absorbs everything: desires, frustrations, expectations, fragments of others. Over time, this accumulation creates a new frequency within us, a new emotional tone that begins to determine how we see the world, how we react, and even what we attract. We are not just relating, we are being shaped by the encounter. Blavatsky said that the subtle body stores each transformation as a new contour, a new layer, and that these layers define the level of consciousness we are capable of reaching. In other words, the more intensely we live, the deeper we transform. But not every transformation elevates us. Some lead us astray. They distance us from our essence. They make us reflections of others, rather than authentic expressions of who we truly are. If consciousness is moldable, to what extent does it still belong to us? Or are we already carrying forms sculpted by hands we never even noticed? And what if the people who enter our lives, especially those with whom we connect intimately, were already written into a pact made long before our birth? Blavatsky suggested that, in realms beyond the physical, consciousnesses make silent agreements, programmed meetings, necessary encounters that change everything. But these contracts have no ink, no paper. They are sealed with intention, purpose, and destiny. Many spiritual traditions claim that the soul, before incarnating, chooses key experiences for its evolution, and that certain people, no matter how challenging or intense, appear to fulfill these agreements. Psychology might call it synchronicity. Chance might try to explain it. But deep down, something in us knows when a meeting was not random. There are glances that recognize without knowing, touches that awaken stories never told. According to Blavatsky, These contracts involve not only affection or learning. In many cases, they involve imbalances that need correcting, emotional debts, unresolved traumas, karmic cycles that must be completed. That's why sometimes the person we love most is also the one who challenges us the most. The meeting is not punishment, it is fulfillment. And the bond that forms, even when it hurts, carries a force that seems to have roots deeper than memory itself. Have you ever felt that something in a relationship seemed inevitable? As if no matter how much you tried to avoid it, the connection was already sealed? These feelings may be echoes of the invisible contract acting beneath the surface. Even without realizing it, we are often just living out a scene agreed upon in another realm, where promises were made, meetings were set, and wounds cried out for healing. But what is almost never discussed is that these contracts do not guarantee a happy ending. They guarantee a crossing, a decisive moment that forces us to grow, change, awaken, or even break old patterns. Blavatsky said that some of these pacts are so ancient they have already been forgotten, yet they continue operating silently, guiding our steps and feelings like invisible strings. And if the most intense relationship of your life was not a choice, but a reunion sealed by a promise made before time, what exactly did you promise, and why are you only now beginning to remember? During the most intimate moment, who is really in control? Blavatsky claimed that while the bodies entwine and emotions take over, a part of the soul steps back and observes. A point of pure consciousness, silent, awake, that does not participate in the scene, but records it. She called it the inner observer, a fragment of higher consciousness that never sleeps. Even when the body surrenders, this presence remains, silently watching. Neuroscience has already identified something similar, the phenomenon of metacognition, or the ability to observe one's own thoughts and actions in real time. But what science does not yet understand is that in certain altered states, such as during emotional or spiritual climax, this consciousness seems to separate, to expand, as if it exits the body and watches from outside. Some describe the sensation of simultaneously living and witnessing what is happening, as if there were more than one I present. Blavatsky said this presence is like an etheric recording. Everything felt, said, and transmitted during intimacy is recorded in this deep layer of consciousness, not for judgment, but for spiritual memory. That's why, according to her, certain moments come back with inexplicable force years later. They were not merely lived, they were imprinted at a level where time does not erase them, where everything remains. This hidden I is not a watcher, but a witness of what we truly are when all masks fall. Because in the truest intimacy, there is no control, no narrative, only presence. And it is precisely in that absence of filters that authentic, and sometimes shadowy, parts of ourselves are revealed. It is at that moment that the observer records what the conscious mind often prefers to forget, but the soul does not forget. Some traditions call this silent witness the Atman, or higher self, a divine fragment connected to the whole that observes each experience as a step on the spiral of consciousness. If this is true, then every intimate act is not merely an encounter between two beings, but also a testimony of the self to itself. And everything that happens there remains inscribed in the subtle field as part of the story of who we are becoming. But if this inner eye sees everything, what does it do with what we choose to ignore? At the peak moment of intimate union, something strange happens. Boundaries dissolve. The body no longer knows where it ends or where the other begins. The mind surrenders, time disappears, and all that remains is a raw, intense, nameless presence. Blavatsky said that at that very moment, the ego dissolves, and for a few seconds, what we call I vanishes. What remains is something prior to name, body, personality. A pure state of existence. Neuroscience has a technical name for this: flow state or experience of self-dissolution. It occurs when brain activities associated with personal identity fall silent. But spirituality has always known. This moment of ecstasy is also a glimpse of unity, a space where there are no longer two, not even one. There is only consciousness merged with something greater, something that cannot be explained, but is felt as absolute truth. Blavatsky saw this as a rare opportunity. The body becomes a temple, and the intimate act, a passage to touch what she called cosmic consciousness. There is no more separation, no more need, only presence, only the now. But just as it comes, this state fades. And when it dissolves, when the I returns, something remains altered. A vague sense that we touched a broader reality, and that, for a brief moment, we were part of it. This phenomenon echoes through many mystical traditions. In Taoism, it is called wu-wei, the non-self, non-action. In Zen, it is satori. In Tantra, it is the union of masculine and feminine as cosmic forces, dissolving duality. What is experienced there is not just pleasure. It is the memory of a lost unity, as if the soul recognizes in the other something that reminds it of its origin, the state before separation. But the return from this state is always silent, and with it, the question, who were we in that moment? Was it part of us, or the essence of what we truly are behind all the masks? Intimacy, then, is not revealed merely as a human act, but as a portal of remembrance. Remembrance that separation is an illusion, that we have never truly been alone, and that everything we seek in the other is what we lost of ourselves. But if this state of unity is possible, why do we insist on living as if we were only incomplete halves?